All right, this stream is live. We are streaming on YouTube. And I posted the link to Twitter and Discord.
Awesome. I'll be back in a sec.
Sure. Maybe I should add some vehicles for people to play with. I still haven't swapped this dang combustion engine sound from our transit pod, though.
All be electric.
Yeah. Here's a couple cargo pods for folks to drive. Their speed limit is still too high, though. If anyone hasn't tried a vehicle on Spatial yet, you just walk up to these vehicles and press the F key. You can drive them around. Need to get a bicycle working. The default Spatial vehicle prefab is four-wheeled vehicle.
Are we doing anything with these little models and the all today, or are they just here for fun?
Which ones?
The little shuttle, small EV carts.
Oh, yeah, I just put them in for fun while we're waiting for folks to arrive.
Okay.
We could think of something
but please
to do
leave
with
them in.
Yeah, we can probably use them.
Yes. I would like to use them. I have a question for the folks.
Yeah.
After the
Is it related to like psychology or
No. How many do we have?
We can make as many as we need.
Okay.
I was thinking we could try to like simulate crossing the street and negotiating with one of them to cross the street. Welcome everyone. Oh, I see Mang here. I see Peter is here. We are probably ready to go in about like 5 minutes. The first part of the meetup today is going to be over in the hedge here with the presentation, and then we've got an interactive portion afterwards. It's going to be really fun. I've been looking forward to this all week. One thing we haven't done in a while is to type where everyone's coming from. So if you can hear this, I want you to type it in the chat. Where are you logging in from today? I'd love to see. Some of us, like Ryan, have been traveling around the world, so I don't even know where they are at the moment. Maine, Flanders, Darmstadt, Germany, and Tokyo. I believe Ryan is in Bali. Matt, you know what we got to make next is a boombox item so we can like play music.
Yeah, I keep forgetting to add music in here because it's really nice in the Puerto Rico site space.
I think it's pretty trivial. We could make a boombox that works with the Creative Commons music that we use for the stream, so that and have a radius on it so that you can sort of place it somewhere in the scene to make music. That would be sweet. All right, I think we're getting close to enough people, so maybe we should kick it off. Really excited for the meetup today. We've got Eva Cossens-North, PhD from TU Darmstadt, who's going to be talking about transit, future technologies. Before we get into that, just want to do a quick intro. Most of us are regulars here, but so you probably know about Spectra, but for anyone watching on YouTube, Spectra Cities is a community bringing together placemakers and world builders to build ideas from pixels to bricks. We're prototyping and experimenting with ideas for future cities, and then figuring out how to build them and co-design them in real life using these virtual tools. Anyone have any news updates about Spectra things or your personal projects? Anything that's been happening this week? How about you, Matt?
Personal updates for Spectra. I went to downtown Shinjuku on Monday and met with another VR lab, which has been putting out a lot of content. Has some pretty exciting projects happening in Shibuya Scramble Square and whatnot. So it'd be cool to collaborate with them soon and see if we can engage with more Japanese extended reality creators. I'd say that's the most exciting thing, most new thing which has happened. Otherwise, just game development.
Awesome.
Some blogs coming out soon.
Anyone else have any updates? I know I heard an big update from Strata this week. Do you want to share about that, Richard?
Yeah, our roof garden project had the official launch on Monday on the Princess Anne Hospital in South.
Oops. Oh no. Disconnected. Sorry. That's amazing. So the roof.
Yeah, I think I saw some of the pictures of it either on Twitter or LinkedIn. It looks really nice.
Yeah, the rooftop garden.
Yeah,
we were standing there a month ago.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? It looked so much like the place that we had our talk. It was really good job on the virtual one. Really excited to see that in person.
Well, we draw it up in Revit. That's what they're building it to.
Yeah.
Obviously, the virtual model is taken off the Revit model, so it's quite reassuring that it looks similar.
Do they think that coffee shop thing is going to go in there, or is it going to be something else?
They're having a few problems getting a supplier. They're a little bit worried about how it stacks up commercially.
Interesting.
But there's a staff card entrance system on the sliding door to get in there. So after 6 months or so, they'll have some footfall data which they can provide to potential suppliers. So we're quite hopeful that once there's some evidence that X thousand people use it per week, the coffee operators will be more interested.
Nice.
Am I in the right place?
Yeah, welcome everyone who just arrived to the Spectra Cities meetup. If that's what you're looking for, this is where we are right now. The talk portion is happening over here in the green hedge area. So if you just spawned in at the spot, you'll see some controls in front of you, how to navigate, and you'll find most of us gathered over here. We're just about to get started. We were doing some news updates from the Spectra community. If anyone's not in the Discord, there's a link in the blue banner right here to join the Discord. And we're just about to get started with our speaker, Eva. Is it Eva or Eva? Sorry.
Eva, yeah.
Eva, yeah. I would love to get started to learn more about this amazing project. Is a grant-funded research project that it's incorporating Spectra. So it's so exciting. And I can't do a proper introduction justice, but I'd love to hear more about your background and how you got into your field of study right now.
Sure. Thank you so much. So my name is Eva Cossens-North. I'm a professor at TU Darmstadt, but have lived in the United States for about 20 years. have gotten a master's and a PhD from MIT, was an assistant associate and full professor at Michigan State. And then I received the call to TU Darmstadt because they are very much moving into the space of artificial intelligence and sustainability. And so what I'm first like to present a little bit is about the research project we won with Spectra, and shout out please to Ryan, to Matt, to Andrea, to Spectra Cities in general, who has actually enabled that grant proposal. And it simply asks, can intelligence be sustainable? Next slide, please. And so here I'll just briefly go over what urban science is, what the proposal was about. I will introduce autonomous vehicles as public transit vehicles. So that talks a little bit about the research I've done, and then introduce the lab where we have science running on our computers and test basically human behavior and mobility in its future. Next slide, please. So if you think about an industrial revolution, we always had economic growth and global competition at its heart. And we're facing the next revolution where AI will enter our lives. Next slide, please. And what we're asking for is basically, can technology, how it's portrayed right now as the savior of humanity, as the new breakthrough, can it actually deliver on the promise that it will make our world more sustainable when we implement it? Next slide, please. And so we're looking at many challenges in our future that challenges life on Earth, and AI, be it drones or new developments in pandemic research, or basically battling climate change, that AI can do it. Next slide, please. And so what our project does is we're taking the Sustainable Development Goals and triangulate it with the latest developments in artificial intelligence and smart technologies. And we're looking whether AI really in a sustainable way, meaning economic, environmental, and social, advances our world towards more sustainable living in cities. Next slide, please. And so if you look at what I've done in the past, I've done very interdisciplinary research. I've worked in many cities across the world. I publish a lot, and this project will basically open a very new tier of research where we'll look into 400 cities across the world. Next slide, please. And what I'm asking for is whether AI in its past, so meaning smart technologies that have been implemented in cities, did it really lead us up to this point to more sustainable cities? So that's more in the history. Is it doing it right now? So the grant runs over 5 years. And will it do so in the future? And that's where Spectra comes in, and how we will work in virtual reality to figure out whether more AI in our future will make us more sustainable. Next slide, please. And we look at the past by looking into how big data, how local governments have implemented new technologies and use algorithms to figure out whether through text mining, whether locally we can see increases in sustainability the smarter our cities got. Slide, please. So we test that on 400 cities and looking basically into that impact. Here we can have then implementation evidence. The stream is it, next slide please, would then look into our current system. Next slide please. And we are looking here primarily into civil engineering and private companies, meaning if new technologies are implemented, new AI algorithms by private companies right now or over the course of the next 5 years, can we measure locally in cities whether we became more sustainable through a pre-post study, and try to measure the industry impact it has on sustainability of cities. Next slide, please. And then it's, of course, the research stream of our future. If we implement more AI, will we be more sustainable? Next slide, please. And here we are looking into behavior of people and very much draw on the social sciences when we're looking at a conception of the future city. And as basis, we use Spectra. And what we're trying to see is how people react to new developments in sustainability, new developments of artificial intelligence, and how they conceptualize the city of the future with AI in the picture, while we measure, are we actually behaving more sustainable? Will we use less energy in the city of the future? Will we travel more sustainably? So it's basically taking a holistic view. For that, we will have to develop new Web 3.0 methods, and we will jump into the exploratory space in a little bit to figure out what I mean by that. And we are basically trying to shift the planning paradigm, what it means to have well-being in our future cities. Next slide, please. So what do? We are developing a urban science theory that basically explains how AI has and will alter urban systems, and whether that is towards or against sustainability. For that, we use Spectra for the future research stream, and implement in Spectra was what we find in 400 cities on the ground, how they've developed, and try to test how that will impact our future. And will be the first where we're saying we're really trying to measure the local impact of intelligence on sustainability. Next slide, please. So what I want to do now is I want to take a break from this lecture and basically go over to a wonderful map that we prepared. So if you would follow me, and then you would basically, I don't know how many pods we have, but please hop into one of the pods and come over here to this wonderful map on the floor. And if you're looking at the transportation system that's on this floor, you see primary, secondary, and tertiary routes. And what we're trying to do is figure out a way to drive these autonomous vehicles that are, of course, with renewable energy. So we still have to work on the sound of that, but basically trying to figure out which routes we would basically have to take to make it, well, on the one hand, economically viable, to make it environmentally friendly, to make it efficient, and to make it equitable. So if you walk basically through this map, you see different routes and how you would basically use the pods to deliver not only, well, food, you need to deliver with them something to drink. You will need to deliver, of course, people as well. But if they are multifunctional pods, which we right now assume they would also be able to pick up trash and move trash out of the city. So the vision is to have multiple pods working underground in the space and connecting the different areas of Spectra. So if you look up, there's the M02 poster, places to hang out and work and play, and all these quadrants. I mean, you know all of this if you have been in here for a while. These are the places we will deliver. So if you please hop into one of the pods that are right now floating mid-air. So if we could get those down and try and ride the pods and figure out what would be the best route. And here comes now the explanation why Web 3.0 hasn't really figured out how to measure it, because what we are trying to do is, if we let you now literally play with the tools and figure out what the best way is, and you come up with a way and continue driving it, if each one of you picks a different route, how will we decide what the optimal route is? And for us, that's a new Web 3.0 technology that we really first have to develop in order to understand what people prefer and how they would behave.
When we're talking about autonomous routing, though, shouldn't that be, that wouldn't be like a human programmed route, though, right? That would be an AI optimization.
We could optimize for, let's say, priority would be first people, secondary food. So we can certainly have it completely autonomous. We can program it to pick out,
to run
let's
set
say,
routes.
Yes. So I would basically say we can still or have to still figure out what human behavior looks like. And for that, that would be the second part of my presentation, where I will give you a little bit more information about how right now these pods are envisioned to function, what people think about autonomous vehicles, autonomous shuttles to be more precise, bus shuttles. That would be one.
We have these pins as well, which we can move and duplicate if we want to mark set any routes, if that's helpful. I don't know.
Okay, so what we can do then, if you want to use or introduce the pins right now, then let me give you a little bit more information. So if you look at D17, for example, the kit of parts, so you have urban elements that will basically lead to a downstairs floor. And if you now turn back to the map that's on the floor, and you would try to set the pin exactly where you would put a stop for that autonomous shuttle. So please pick up a pin and move that pin where you would put a stop.
I'm going to need to enable moving in a second. 1 second. You should be able to move the pins around.
Is that underground level, or this is underground level?
Yes, it would be underground level. Pods would run only on the underground. I think that's for now that's envisioned this way.
Sorry, what was the question? I was busy making the pins.
The pins should please go on the map where you think the shuttle stops should be.
And those underground sections are just these green, yellow, and blue lines?
Yeah, we should have explained the diagram a bit more maybe. If you're familiar with Spectra, you might recognize some of the blocks represented here. The blue and the green lines are supposed to be underground tunnels, and the yellow line. And then there is a curvy line running through here, which is like a bike path called the Broadway system. And then there are also linear streets on the ground level represented here. And this circle here where I'm standing is where we are right now in the larger intersection. This block here with all these little squiggles is the market block. You may have visited the night market space before. I think I would put a stop at the corner of the market, on the corner. For some reason, I want to put it there.
I think I put it in the same spot over here. Yeah, I did basically the same. Did you drop this one here?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, we got a cluster. It seems like a lot of them are clustered on these main axes, the green and the blue tunnel axes.
And then I'm standing on top of an elevator. So we certainly would put them right in front of where people would actually come out of the elevator, would hop onto the shuttle. Then clearly main intersections where we would assume to switch. And that would be basically, now we are using our experience and our history to place these pins. And when you remember what Brian just said, well, if AI does it, how would it route? Do we really need to have stations anymore? So it's something that we would then be able to test in AI to see, or in Spectra to say, okay, what if we had a program? What if it would route this way? Would people still take that shuttle? So I think it's a very interesting sphere to do research and explore on those. All right, so thank you for playing for now. I'm going to head back to my presentation, and I give you a quick run through the what we've done in the past of how people right now perceive autonomous shuttles and what they like and what they don't like. And what I think is very novel, and that was one of the pitches that, or why we won this grant, was right now transportation on autonomous vehicle is pretty much constrained in a way that we all did before we had VR. We did hypothetical research. So meaning, what if you had autonomous shuttles? Would you really take them and why? And so what we did in this particular research project, we went or were in the state of Michigan. And if you can please go to the next slide. And our question here was, well, the Sustainable Development Goals have one particular one. And if you pay attention to the last section of it, that we have to provide special attention to the needs of those in vulnerable situations, women, children, persons with disabilities, and older ones. And so especially in Michigan, you have, they call it the Great Tsunami, so you have a very aging population. And so we figured we can ask those who travel public transit whether or not they would take an autonomous vehicle if they had the choice. So can you please go to the next slide? And we have published it, and it's basically a perception of autonomous vehicles as public transit. Next slide, please. Okay, now I get, do I actually answer questions? I think so, I can. So how do people with wheelchairs roll right on? Yes, you could. Ride in a shuttle, right now the plan was to about 10 people, and it was a demand and response. So what we did, could we provide enhanced mobility? That's so far the theory, that transportation challenged populations, and the question, those with a mobility disability, those who are unwilling or unable to drive. So this could include elderly or children, or those who simply don't want to. And especially the vulnerable and socially excluded would have access to public transportation. Next slide, please. And so we were asking, is that really, really true? Can or will these people, these AVs or autonomous vehicles are specifically designed for, take those? And what we found is that very little attention has been paid to those who frequently use transit, meaning those who ride the shuttles, and that all studies were based on perception and access of surveys that were administered online. So we set up a different research project. Next slide, please. And we were asking, would people be willing to use autonomous bus service? Would mobility disabilities differ from those without? We asked fixed route, meaning a route that's always the same, it doesn't change. Demand response is pretty much like a shuttle on demand. So we call for it and it comes. And then we would like to know, does the bus driver play any role in this entire thing? And would it be helpful to have a relationship? And is that increasing the willingness to ride? And if not, or if so, what are the major concerns? Next slide, please. And so what we did compared to many online surveys, we did two things. We called people randomly, 919 Michiganders, and asked them about the current usage of transport and the likelihood to use autonomous public transit. And then we conducted an onboard intercept survey. That means we went onto the buses and talked to close to 1,500 bus riders in Michigan, whether they would ride an autonomous vehicle. And it was then to date, I don't know whether it was beaten at that point, but it was the largest intercept survey ever in the United States to look at AVs. And we had an incredible response rate of 85%. What you usually have an online survey, oh, thank you, it's usually 10 to 15%. So we were fairly certain we got the right people who could tell us their opinion. Next slide, please. And so what we found, this is basically the slide that I want you to take with you, is that autonomous buses might increase willingness to use public transit. That means people who have not ridden public transit before might be more willing to ride it just because it exists. And again, hypothetical. That was the phone survey. But we also found that was about 50% of current public transit riders were hesitant about riding an autonomous bus, meaning 50% who were right now on the bus would say, I don't feel well, and I would stop riding it. One of the things that stood out to us was that younger males, more so than females, seniors or people with mobility disabilities, would were more, or younger males were more likely than any other group to actually ride autonomous vehicles. And what we also found is that the rider satisfaction, so even if they liked their bus driver, they had no impact on whether they were willing to ride or not in an AV. Next slide, please. So here is the first one. You see here in green, basically those who did not ride public transit, but said, if it was autonomous, we would ride it. And then we asked, well, if you see the top one, we had only 5% of those we called. So out of those 919 bus riders we called, only 1.5% or 1.2% respectively were riding right now, and they were more or less likely to. And if you look at the number on the very right, 2.94, it means basically twice as likely people were willing to not ride AVs, public transit anymore, if they were AVs. So you would basically disadvantage the ones who were already riding it and wouldn't want to take it, in exchange for those who are not currently riding it but might want to. And again, younger males were the ones who were more likely to ride or be willing to ride in an AV. Next slide, please. Then we were looking into certain demand and response or fixed route riders. So the moment you fixed a route for an AV, 55% were more likely to accept AVs. So they trusted AVs more if they had a fixed predefined route than having them come on demand, so free space. Safety was and is and remains a major concern. So we had many people respond what they were most afraid of. The lack of a human in an AV was another concern, mostly mentioned by females. That was more in relation, I would say, to safety on the bus. And distrust in general in technology was another frequently mentioned concern. Next slide, please. Here, I don't want to go into all the details, but what I want you to take away is kind of the demographics whom we asked. So it was pretty evenly distributed in a sense of that we had enough to analyze the different groups. And what you see on the left is that older people generally were less likely to ride in AVs than younger people. There's a clear age difference where, when you remember when I mentioned the demographics in Michigan were really more leaning towards the elderly. So you see the population age. Females were less willing to ride in AVs than males. And for demand and response riders, those with a mobility disability were less likely to use autonomous bus service than those without. So those that were in the SDG goals, as you can see here, would be more and more disadvantaged if AVs were introduced. And that's big if they would actually follow the hypothetical scenario of I would or wouldn't ride compared to, let's say, testing one and riding one. Next slide, please. So what really surprised us, and Matt pointed it out here too, is that rider satisfaction with our drivers had absolutely no impact on their willingness to ride. We asked for skill, we asked for professionalism, we asked for friendliness, and we couldn't find any relationship. So the rider didn't have a significant relationship in that choice. And here again, we had fixed route riders who were unwilling to ride in AVs and specified their concerns. However, they said no human in control was a discouraging factor. What Michigan, that might be a small tidbit that I haven't mentioned, what Michigan decided to do, they would like to go towards the AV route, but also said because of the concerns, we would put a person in the AV to help people with mobility disabilities or any other disability they might have. They would be there for safety for females. So they decided they would like to pursue AVs, but would definitely have a human on the shuttle bus for AVs. Next slide, please. So what are the implications? So if we were to introduce AV, we would enforce a demographic shift that basically attracts younger and male riders more so than the elderly, females, and people with mobility disabilities. So if that was the case, we have to then introduce also accompanying policies that would reduce the chance of that widening of the socioeconomic gap, because public transit especially is there to support those with other means, with mobility disabilities who can't get to places anywhere else. So what is also not mentioned in the survey, we also asked, what are your, or why are you riding public transit to begin with? And most of them basically said, we need to get food. We can't, this is our, one of the few means that we can get food, or for medical services, or for social visits that, especially as you age, becomes really important. We were really surprised about the low acceptance among riders with mobility disabilities, because that was one of the touted advantages. So here we believe that more benefits have to be mentioned. So for example, here Steve had posted, what about wheelchairs? How do they actually get on? So that's a that would be basically a topic to address immediately, saying yes, there is a way. And we had lower acceptance among demand response riders, where actually AI and AVs would have great advantages of optimizing routes. And so what we basically advocated for is that public transit vehicles should be tailored to whatever the rider's needs are, and AI can certainly do that. Next slide, please. Okay, so this basically summarizes concisely what we just discussed. And one thing I don't think I've mentioned here, the only group within our sample was among those with a disability where the vision impaired people, and those were more likely to actually accept AVs than any other group who had a disability. All right, so now I would like to hop over again to our I call it the play space, if that is fine. And I would like to go into the area where I think it's the last, it's a large poster, places to hang out, work, play. So that's the MO2 poster. And if you look at these posters and you think about the demographics that I described, and you would basically want people to take that shuttle, you would want to introduce it because we have a starter effect, and then other people might follow. So where would you basically place your pin? Matt, can we place the pins also up on the map? Is that an option?
Yeah. What do you mean up? Like above?
Yeah, onto the basically onto the vertical MO2 poster, places to. Oh, yes, yeah. Exactly. So that
someone
works.
in VR will have to rotate them.
Pins.
So
if we rotate them in VR, the next person who grabs it in desktop, it might switch the orientation back. But we could use it just like this.
Yeah.
Only VR users can break the axes. Yeah.
So you can, I don't know if you can move. I can't really I can't place it up high though, because I'm there. Oh wow, teamwork.
There we go. All right. Where did we want to put
that actually worked.
So, excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, so here we would basically see, where would you place the pin? If you look at the places you see which people are more likely to live there. Where would you place the pin to make it very likely that the autonomous vehicles would be a success?
This is for passenger or for cargo?
For passengers. Let's just play with passengers for now.
Okay. I'd probably do the market still. So that's over here. It's on the left, the one up from the bottom.
Are we picking a particular persona in mind for this? Or? But I can, I'm going to re-enable editing for everyone. You know what might work well is if we use this pin on the poster to select a persona, and then use the pins on the map to select a stop that might fit that persona. It looks like we have some more elderly persona over here in the right side image, and like a younger person here, and then families in the bottom left, for example.
But I guess are we trying to pin the exact location, because some of these are on the second level, for example. You know, there's a courtyard level there. Yeah, well, that's on. There's a lot of these on the upper levels.
No, it's basically I'm looking at right now where the pins are moving, where we would put them, or where people decide to choose those.
There was this whole theory with the design of this city where the second level routes, which you can see there behind this poster, there's sort of a bridges connecting the blocks at the first level. And so there was a theory that those second level pathways around the city might be more protected from vehicle traffic and more appealing to older users or children. I wonder how that theory would bear out with this research.
Yeah, certainly we could try. So I don't see many more pins moving. So if I were to choose, if I was going to make it a success within, let's say, a Spectra world or a real city, we certainly were looking for early adopters. And so from basically the research, we would say quarters, areas for younger males where they usually are. So for example, universities, there we have right now, I think actually there's more females than males, but where you basically have younger males who try and test it first. I would probably use high densities. So I'm glad no one selected the park, but where people work usually. So you absolutely have to travel. You have to travel frequently. If it's it also depends home office, but basically high densities. You would put them in high density areas and very easy access to right in front of workplaces or right in front of shopping malls, medical hospitals probably. So this would be the route I would suggest. And among the pictures, I would probably say, I think that the one I'm moving right now, this would be the place where I would have chosen. That being said, here's also a very good location as outside. So is the other ones that are selected. They're at entranceways going upward. So thank you for listening on that presentation.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Cool.
Sure. So if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to respond to anything that might come up.
There were a few things posted in the chat earlier. Some questions about the actual shuttles, like how many people can ride in a shuttle, how to address mobility. How about wheelchairs? A question about wheelchairs. How do autonomous vehicles account for that?
So you can roll into that space for some. So there's extensive studies going on. What's the angle and so forth. Surprisingly, in our study, mobility, people with a mobility disability, where most concerned is that the autonomous shuttle wouldn't see them. So let me give you an example. If there was ice on the ground and they would leave their place of residence and would go to the shuttle and they could see the shuttle, and it would take them longer to get there, they might have left late, and a driver would look at them and wait for them to arrive. Or if they were falling down, they always had a human who would see that they were in trouble and could call for help. So this was one of the areas where the people with a mobility disability were really hesitant about AVs. It wasn't necessarily to get on, but to get help with, let's say, strapping themselves in or having another human they could communicate if there was a barrier, and the car would have to, or the autonomous vehicle would have to drive just 20 meters to the right or to the left to be able for them to get on. And that was the primary concern, that they weren't able to communicate that need on the spot that might arise in an instant.
Interesting. Yeah, a few more questions coming into chat.
Okay, so was which cities were selected. So which cities were selected? We didn't select cities. We had or worked with, I think they're close. Okay, don't quote me exactly on the number, but there's about 50 different transit agencies in the state of Michigan who all run their own transportation, own shuttles, and we visited all of them and rode 3 days on different routes they selected. So within the state of Michigan was a very broad spectrum. And yes, the research was done in Michigan. I was a professor at Michigan State. The grant was from the Michigan Department of Transportation. And they wanted to basically test customer satisfaction. And we were able to tag on a few questions about AVs. What else do we have? Yes, prefer a solution that keeps pedestrians such out of streets entirely, that to have no interference. That would be nice. Any European research would be interesting to compare results. That is correct. That would absolutely be correct. But I have this large research project now, so we are right now selecting people. We have still an open position that will get posted shortly. So if anyone is on this and would like to get a PhD in Darmstadt, please do apply. I have another large research project that is on the e-highways. So how do you bring electricity to highways and transport freight without any emissions? So that's an overhead line close to Frankfurt where trucks can drive and charge their batteries while driving. That is supposed to be a zero emission vehicle. And if you think of the age of connected vehicles, then we won't ever need to stop to actually charge, but can do so only when we load or offload those trucks. And so these are two large research projects that keep me pretty busy, even though I would still like to do some research on autonomous vehicles. But for now, I haven't started that in the European realm.
Any more questions about the actual grant project and the research? I'm really curious how you all are planning to incorporate, I mean, we already are kind of here, but like incorporate the virtual environments like Spectra and these tools like VR as a method of research, not just sort of lectures. Is there a plan for that?
So that's what we have. That's what we have to figure out. So for example, if you just looked at the exercise we just did with the pins everywhere, how do we figure out that now this is a group of, right now there's 13 people on it, but let's say we play this in Spectra and there's all of a sudden we have 10,000 decide to put a pin into one of those, and we want to figure out what was their decision process, because from virtual reality we have a lot of different data streams that run in. But how do we then select what is the most desired route, or what's the most desired location? And this is for me a new Web 3.0 tool that we have to develop. So that's one part of the research. And then of course, we would have AI tools we would like to put in, and then basically ask people to test it in virtual reality. So let's say we have a new app that says, or it actually tells you how to save energy. It's optimized, it's for the city optimized, it gives you options to choose, it shows you how much energy you use by doing a certain thing or by buying a certain product, or it basically gives you an all-compassing picture of how much energy you use at what point in time. Let's say you have that as an app and we give it to you and we let you live in the city, let's say for a week, or for 2 hours or 3 hours, and we ask you to please use the new app and decide what to do. And then we can measure whether and how much your energy usage actually decreases just by having a new AI tool that can optimize it for you. Because we can develop these tools, but how we actually accept them, adopt them, or apply to them, that's what we would like to test in VR first.
I heard that in the lab, if you have headsets, there might be a way to like capture data from research participant, like in terms of like their body language as they move around a city or things like that. Is there a plan? What's the behavioral side of your research?
Okay, so for now, a lot of transportation researchers simulate behavior, how someone moves in a city. If you want to look for something in the future, we use the lab to gather basically primary data to use for simulations. So we can measure, we are trying to measure how you're feeling. That means if you're, for example, anxious of crossing the street if you see an AV, or we are trying to measure how infrastructure would have to change if you have certain demands that AI sets on an urban environment. And if you move then people into our lab, and we have different, so it's a mobility lab, we have different, we have pedestrians, we have pods. The goal is to introduce bikes and a wheelchair as well. And we want to then invite selected participants to basically spend extensive amounts in the lab to collect that primary research of understanding how their emotions are and how their behavior is if they would interact with things we believe are sustainable. Our history, so that's research stream 1 and 2. If we found things that made us more sustainable and that are smart, and we would move that extensively into the future, how people would basically in the lab enjoy it or reject it, because you can ask it hypothetically and you can track what they do in the lab.
Interesting.
Okay. Are you measuring impact of green spaces, parks, and parklets? So that would definitely be in an environmental area of our sustainability triangle. And what we're doing is there is a large database of, or SDG developments or matrices, and one of them is park spaces. In some sense, it's how large it is per percentage per people. And so we're trying to track that in 400 cities, and it is basically in control for us. So we can, because we are primarily looking for AI, we use AI to change human behavior, or trying to change human behavior, let's put it this way, towards more sustainable living. And our control would be if a city, for example, had, I don't know, 5% of green space compared to 15% green space, we would have to use it as a control.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks so much. There's still about 10 minutes. Maybe we could transition to just more open chatting. In fact, I'm going to turn on the proximity audio. So feel free to ask some questions or hang out for the last 10 minutes, and just give another round of applause with the C key for Eva. Wonderful presentation. We're really excited to get updates on the research. And also, Meng is here as well, a PhD candidate also from TU Darmstadt. So they're on the team. And Andrea is here as well from Numina, who's also contributing to this research, I believe. Let us know how we can stay involved in it. I'm sure some folks here would love to help out.
Even do you plan to, when you talk about the routes, you plan on trying to build a model that, like, are either creating a sample data for them to build a model with, or yeah, do you plan on trying to simulate and have the data for simulation?
So we're trying to gather data on that primary research data that helps us to simulate how people would travel in the future. So with VR and with the lab, we come closest to representing what you can do in VR. And we're hoping that we see a change in behavior when we put people into Spectra, which is extremely sustainable, extremely made for walking, biking, that we see that behavior change and basically track it over time to simulate a better way for us to move and travel.
So basically the intention, somebody that's maybe older and say, oh, I don't think I would want to ride an autonomous vehicle, and then you kind of show them the experience, and then you ask them the same question again and see if there's been a change or an impact?
Yes, so that's a pre-post study, and then we would develop scenarios where we would like them to travel and see and experience, and they should narrate what they feel. So what you usually don't get is a narration of while people do something. So you have a narration that we would like to tape. We have eye tracking, pupils, pupil dilations. Are they afraid? Are they happy? So we're planning a hackathon in the fall to kind of calibrate the equipment that we have for different emotions and how we measure them. And then we would basically measure how they feel, why they go through different experiences, have them narrated, and as you said, have a pre and post, whether they are more or less likely, just on what they have in a written survey after the fact.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I dropped a link to our Discord if anyone's not in the Spectra Discord yet. We have meetups like this pretty frequently, and we're planning some more workshops for the end of this month to actually do some collaborative design for a real life architecture project that Ryan's working on with Spectra Architects. So very excited to maybe announce more about that.
Yeah, I'll give a little context now. So yeah, at the end of the month, we have an 80-acre piece of land that we've been developing 2 buildings on with Andrea and the Numena team. And we're gonna we have the virtual model here in Spatial, and we want to bring people in and work on the interior designs and the landscaping. And so we're going to run 2 different workshops, one on the interiors, one on the landscaping. And so it'd be great if anybody here today comes to the end of the month and participates in that. We'll post details on that soon.
Yeah, if you want to visit the space, we have a portal up. I don't know if it's ready yet, but there is a link over in the other side of the intersection if anyone wants to hang out afterwards. Yeah, thanks again, Ava. If there's any calls to action or anything you want to pitch before we go, feel free. I know you've said something about...
No, I'm just very grateful to get... Yeah, no, I'm very grateful to get the chance. And the only pitch that was, if you want to get a PhD in Darmstadt, please do apply. Please come to us. We're always happy to take adventurous people on. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Anyone want to see the farm? We can, if anyone's interested, there's a link over here. Gonna ride our bikes all the way there. The skybox is not reflective of the actual environment of this project yet. It might be improved in the future. And the detail's been turned down a bit from what these folks have been working on in the VR version of this, or the standalone version of this. But more or less seems like what they've been working on. Actually, the 2 architects of this project are here right now. I'm curious. This is like the first time you've been in here with a group like this, huh? I got the pool working. I raised the level of the bottom of the pool a little bit. Could also sit on the edge of the pool.
Hey, Nick, does it spawn at the base of the stairs for everybody?
It does, yeah. We can move that.
Yes.
I think we should, if it's easy to do, I think we should drop the spawn point into here.
Yep, yeah, it's super easy.
Some people even navigating the stairs.
Here.
Yeah, it can be a little tricky. Yeah, we could put it right here in the middle by the pool.
Okay, can you do that tonight if you can?
Uh-huh.
I want to share this out.
Yeah. I'll update it after the meetup.
You don't have to. You don't have to make a whole new build again, right?
No. It replaces the most recent one.
Perfect. I didn't realize you had the nice little audio. That's kind of nice.
Yeah. It was like a $2 track. It's actually like a Puerto Rico track, like ambient track. It was called Morning Jungle or something. I don't know. It was like Morning or something like
It
that.
was actually referring to Puerto Rico as
Yeah.
well.
Oh yeah. It's actually set claimed it was actually Puerto Rico. So.
This sounds like this could be tango.
So we
Like a
have
bird.
two. Oh yeah, really? Is it familiar?
Yeah.
I don't know any of the birds in. I don't know any of the birds down there. What they sound like. But I have like very particular birds where I am. I know it's like probably gives a really strong sense of place if you are familiar with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're gonna drag in anybody that's listening. We're gonna drag in furniture, kitchen stuff, and kind of build out and furnish some of these spaces. And then also the landscaping. I'm trying to get somebody that's done permaculture before and come and talk to us. So yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, we're thinking end of this month, so probably on a weekend, maybe Sunday, Monday, doing a 2-day session. You know, one or both can come to that, but we're gonna let you guys know once we get the date sorted out.
Cool.
It's really nice. I like hanging out in here. You folks did a wonderful job, Barbara and Andrea, everyone that was working on this. It was cool watching how it changed too over time.
Yeah, I'm happy with where we
Amazing.
landed for sure.
So like down on the lower level here, there's like a tunnel sort of that is like a very easy loading area. If you were gonna imagine using this space as a retreat center, you could load in your vehicles here and carry in all of your supplies really easily through this corridor.
These
Nick, that
these terrace beds, Nick, they're quite interesting. Are you using the pool to irrigate the terrace beds?
I
Is
would
that the
ask,
intention?
I would ask the architects. I can't answer that, but yeah, I'm curious as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
For the irrigation.
yeah, it's. I'm guessing the pool is captured rainwater off the roof.
No, it'll probably be like a saltwater pool.
Right.
I think for like yeah, you either do like a chlorine pool or a saltwater pool. So I don't think we could irrigate the crops. We might want to include a water feature though. Like you could have, I could imagine like a little bit of a waterfall cascading over here, and you could have some sort of water feature.
I mean, it would be cool to give a detailed rundown to the Strata folks. This is sort of their area expertise as well, so it'd be interesting. That'll be one of the workshop days, sort of devoted to that side of the project. So, might be a cool chance to get input from different people.
Yeah, well, yeah. Keep
Guys,
me
do you
posted.
want me to
It's
give
quite
you a
interesting.
swim prefab so people can swim in your swimming pool?
Oh yeah, you have a swimming animation?
Yes, I do. I have to only check if I can put it now, but otherwise I can put it tomorrow or the day after tomorrow.
Oh yeah,
if
sure.
You wish.
Yeah, that would be great.
Hey,
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you can sort of like trade and swap animations on Spatial now, so you can like have a custom. Some people already are swimming and stuff. It's nice. Oh yeah! Wow. It works. That's great.
Yeah, what is put in place?
Is it like
Well,
an
it works
item?
because I have a profile, but I didn't put
yeah.
it in the space because I had think I don't have it as a prefab that I can just drop it now.
Oh, right. Okay. Is it what is it classed as technically? Is it an avatar attachment or?
It's avatar animation.
Avatar animation. Interesting. That's cool that they can be unbundled from avatars. It's nice. And some other platforms, like all the stuff is connected to the avatar, so you have to sort of switch avatar to do everything, but it's cool that you can switch animations, share them between. That's great. Gotta spend more time on spatial. I think I missed that tour they were doing, Matt, the Japanese community. Was that on the 6th, I think? Was that today? I think it would have been this morning.
That would have been today, yeah.
Yeah. Oh well. Hopefully they do another one. I gotta make sure to add this, move the spawn point. I'm gonna write that down.
High exposure on the skybox really does a lot for the lighting in here.
Yeah, I mean, as much as it doesn't match like the site, it's kind of really epic.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
actually not. The feel of it, it's not literally the site, but the feel of it does.
a little
it's,
bit Lion King, like Simba.
Yeah.
All of that is your
You know,
kingdom.
it got the vibes.
I mean, it's an interesting question whether the virtual version of a space has to correspond to the real one, or if it can take certain liberties.
I mean, I
Yeah,
think when I
artistic
get
liberty.
back to the island, I'd love to do a proper 3D photo.
Yeah, for sure.
But sort of limited. I didn't really get necessarily everything captured before I left.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Lucas, Barbara, I was gonna ask if like the tool that you guys use to capture a 360 from within a scene, so we could maybe make a 360 that included the terrain that we had to cut out for this to get it on spatial. But yeah, I mean, I think it's usable for the
presumably-
workshop pretty much.
Just a side question. I'm very interested. You made the plants yourself because, like the flowers, they're so beautiful and so
Oh.
detailed.
Good question. Barbara might know. I think it's a mixture. There's some things that they've made themselves and some things that they sourced from other places. And a lot of these plants also don't look quite as good as they did before because the shader was not made for this pipeline, but they still work.
I love them.
It would be nice to have some approved plants that we could put in our toolkit, some actual open source plants.
That's a good point. We have a lot of the base buildings, but it would be nice to include other things for people to decorate those buildings if they don't have as much experience going around and getting CC0 assets.
Yeah, like a prop library. It might be a fun way to do some modeling practice too with the community, like have like a weekly bounty to like model some props and like use it as a challenge or something. I know some other communities. Yeah, I know some other communities that do sort of modeling challenges and as a way to sort of teach Blender and stuff. It could be a good something to do maybe in the future.
So the plants were made by Numna. Cool.
Nice. Really cool. All right. Well, I gotta get back to work. But this was really fun. I'm gonna stop the broadcast